Hello and welcome to the Political Frontline. My special guest today is Maya Demianczuk, researcher and archivist, DePaul University. Hello, Maya.
Hello, thank you for having me on your show today.
Thank you for you are here. Maya, you are here in Ukraine and you are working on a project. Can you tell me about your project?
Yeah, I'm trying to start a Ukrainian public archive that will be online and available in English and Ukrainian of the last 10 years in Ukraine, so ranging from the Orange Revolution to the current situation.
From the Orange Revolution or the previous year also will be included?
The span of 10 years. So from the Orange Revolution, going past the Maidan, and covering the conflict in the East.
Why this 10 years is so vulnerable?
Because it shows a trend in Ukrainian culture towards direct action of the citizens taking charge and deciding their political fate and deciding the way their country will be run. And you see the Orange Revolution as being sort of the introduction to that, the beginning, setting a precedent, setting the stones in place to make something like the Euromaidan possible.
From what comes your idea to create such projects?
Well, it started about 2 years ago. I had booked tickets to come to Ukraine to visit my family.
For the first time?
Actually, for the second time. My family visits Ukraine a lot. We have a lot of family in Kiev and Ivano-Frankivsk and Lviv. So 2 days before I was scheduled to leave, news broke out of the Maidan and people gathering. And it was very exciting to hear about. Because growing up in Chicago as a Ukrainian American, we learned a lot about the Russian aggression against Ukraine, the Russian censorship of history, and just the millenniums of devastation that happened because of Russia. So it was very encouraging to hear people going out into the streets and fighting for a better country, especially after seeing the failure, not the failure necessarily of the Orange Revolution, but just it was such a hopeful time, and it didn't really result in any sincere political change, obviously having that Yanukovych was then in office following. So I went to show my support, and my family really didn't want me to go because we were listening to the news and it was talking about how dangerous it was, and people were being beaten, and this and that. And I said, "There's."
You mean U.S. news? Or
yes, U.S. news coming in regarding the Maidan was just talking about how devastating and dangerous it was, and et cetera. And I said, "Well, there's no way that I can't miss that. Anyway, like regardless, I have to go, no matter what." So I fly into Ivano-Frankivsk, and then again, I turn on the news station, and I'm following the reports coming from the United States, and I'm following the reports coming into Ukraine, and they're saying they are not allowing foreigners to come in. They have taken women out, and so everyone around me, we're all thinking, "Oh my God, they're going to kill everybody because they're taking women out, they're taking children out, they're not letting foreigners. Like something very horrible is about to happen." So everyone's like, "Oh, you can't go." My family hears, "You can't go. This is not going to be possible." I said, "Okay, no, I really have to go. I have like a feeling this is like, or I know this is like very important." So I go, and it was hundreds of thousands of people working together, passing out sandwiches, like passing out tea, having concerts, speaking, talking, old people, young people, children. It was like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, all these people collaborating together without even a plan. And then at the same time, I'm there and I'm listening to the American reports, and I'm like hearing the reports coming from other news stations, and still it's like this very lack of, it's all misinformation.
Okay, does the U.S. news has changed from that time? What if I were in U.S., which news I could see on the TV?
The United States doesn't want to touch the topic of Ukraine since the invasion of Crimea.
Since the invasion of Crimea. Do you know the possible problems of that?
Why they don't want to touch upon that topic? Because they don't want to make it clear who the aggressor is. it's very important that the world doesn't know who is in fact responsible for these events happening in the East, who's responsible for Crimea. They want it to seem as if it's like an internal problem, that there's a civil war, that this is Ukraine's problem. The second it becomes established, oh, well, Russia is orchestrating these things, that puts the international government, right, the United Nations, and the world in a pretty tight spot. Then they have to make a decision because everybody's watching. But nobody wants to go to war. So they're all going to be very diplomatic about it and go around it.
So let's talk about your project. As I know, there will be 3 groups included in your project. Am I right?
Right.
What are these groups?
So the most important, I am just one person who, well, I'm working with a team, and we're trying to build a very massive archive of the last 10 years. And archives are huge. They include letters and pictures and interviews and audio, and I mean, the list goes on. So we need the cooperation of individuals, like just someone is sitting at home who decided to clip newspapers from when the Maidan was happening or the Orange Revolution. They kept artifacts and to take pictures of them, document them, and submit them through the website that we've created. The second group is going to be private, or not private, independent initiatives. So initiatives such as your...
You mean NGO, not government organizations?
I'm not quite sure if they are or aren't yet, but Euromaidan SOS or Army SOS. Army SOS is working in the East, and they bring back to Kiev artifacts that show who the aggressive forces are there. They bring back Russian passports. They bring back different pieces of bullets or bombs that show where they're made. And so having those kinds of things available on the website can give the public, can give the American public, and can even give maybe a less involved Ukrainian public, those who are less involved, an idea of what's truly happening. Then the third being, I'm looking to collaborate with institutions, museums, and already pre-existing archives.
What about governmental organizations?
I would like to work with government organizations. Obviously, the information they have to offer is somewhat limited because of the heavy bureaucracy that's in place. I mean, also, I would have to be very critical of their process of collecting information, the routes that they go by, what they keep, what they lose. So working with them and having their archives available through my archive online would actually be quite informative as to that process for the government.
Okay, you have mentioned about the government, you have mentioned about bureaucracy, but now we have new government, new presidents, and new government officials. What is your opinion about Ukrainian reforms?
Well,
does they go fast or not? Does the US government and US citizens can see these reforms, can feel these reforms, and so on?
I think, based off of the media reports that are reaching the United States, it's become pretty understood that the reforms are not happening very quickly, but that they are being put into place. But there's a lot of different tiers, levels of people who need to cooperate with that. There's a lot of corruption that needs to be rooted out, which will take a while, which can be pretty discouraging for people, but reform it takes a very long time.
I think all this data must be in your archive very soon, about the reform and so on.
I would love for it to be. I would love to have all of it in the archive. I mean, imagine being able to pull up an article from, let's say, RT, God forbid, okay? And then you go into the archive, and it will be structured somewhat like Google. So if you go to a regular archive, what you have to do is you have to fill out a form. You have to know exactly what you're looking for, who created it, the date. And only then, maybe you'll find it 4 hours later. But here on this website, you type in a certain date, The topic could be murder, the topic could be corruption, and then anything that has that as like gets mentioned in the primary source will show up in a like a drop list. So you can actually go ahead and use it as a resource to verify the news you're receiving.
How do you want to just get financing for your project?
Well, it's
Because
quite...
because as you know, just every initiative, every project, every reform needs money.
Right.
Yes.
It's massive. It's going to take probably a good deal of money to get a nice website, a website that can handle all of those primary sources.
How do you want to name your website?
It will be called the Ukrainian Public Archives, ukrainianpublicarchives.com. Financing, as far as financing, we're really hoping, we don't want to be a government body. We want to be an independent organization that works with these archives. So we're really hoping for at least every institution, main institution, because we don't really expect to get money from individual people or the small little initiatives and cooperatives are happening because they're lacking on money. But there are so many archives and institutions in the United States, Ukrainian diaspora bodies there, and on top of there are many museums here that even if they gave, like $100 each, we would be able to get the website up.
So Maya, now we will have a small pause and then we will continue our program.
Okay.
So this is Political Frontline, and my special guest today is Maya Demianczuk, researcher and archivist, DePaul University. Maya, let's continue our program. Have you received support from the institutions and individuals from the United States?
I've been greeted with a lot of enthusiasm. For Ukrainians living in Chicago, we learn I went to Ukrainian school every Saturday, for example. I went to Ukrainian camp every summer, and we built vatras and sang the nationalist songs and learned and watched videos about the Holodomor and all the horrible things that have happened here. And then we would go to American school on, Monday through Friday. And in our history classes, we wouldn't learn about those things. In fact, there was very little mention of Ukraine at all. And to a lot of people, Ukraine is this mystery. So when I talk to American Ukrainians in Chicago about creating this resource that will preserve and fortify the identity of Ukraine in this very legitimate way, they're very, very excited about it.
When we're talking about the Ukrainian people who live in U.S., did they understand and support Ukraine? I mean, understand of in those ways who is guilty and who is not, who is innocent, who is not, and who is the aggressor in our situation, of course.
There are a lot of different groups of Ukrainians in Chicago, let's say. You have nationalistic Ukrainians. You have Ukrainians who have retreated to the United States, maybe to just get away, who don't necessarily want to talk about it. They don't want to reopen that. They want to be assimilated and let go of that tragedy. But as far as the nationalists, which is a great body of the Ukrainian American community there, they've been marching to the American embassy once a month, trying to protest so that the United States will send more support.
What kind of group have you received support from or expected to receive support from in the future?
The Ukrainian museums, the National Ukrainian Museum in Chicago, the National Ukrainian Museum in New York. I'm still in the process of creating dialogues between them.
What do you think? Who will be the audience of your archive? The students or?
I'm hoping that that it will be a resource for academic people, for researchers, even it could be used by journalists wanting to write articles about Ukraine if they don't have the capacity to come here, they could use interviews and footage that is being put forward on this website. On top of that, I'm really hoping the audience ends up being any person who's reading the news. And this will serve as a way for them to get accurate information, because it's so hard to tell what's true. I mean, even if when you're reading propaganda, that propaganda is so blatantly propaganda, but something about it stays in you, like a line, like just like a little bit of it resonates, and that's a problem. But so you don't know when you're reading propaganda versus when you're reading accurate information, which one is true.
Maya, I think that with this project, I'm positive you will be the part of the history that makes the Ukraine more modern and more European, if I may say so, of course. Okay, what is your just first steps when you will create this archives? You will just gather the information, or you just you will contact the government officials, or?
Yeah, well, I've been here for a month now, and the first part of this has just been trying to locate all the different initiatives that exist of people who have been collecting interviews and pictures, who are just really concerned with preserving the realities that are happening here. The second is, yes, reaching out to government institutions so that they know what I'm creating, and that when they themselves are working to collect information, they consider the website as maybe one of the many places they can house their collections. I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
No, it's okay. Maya, are there official archives existing?
Yes, there are. There's almost 30 very, very large archives that exist in the United States, Ukrainian archives. The problem, though, is that an archive isn't built until sometimes 5-10 years after an event happens. Right now, it's very important and critical to start collecting this information now, to start collecting these primary sources that are being made now, because it is hard to say what will survive in 5 years or 10 years.
What are the shortcomings of the official archives already in existence?
That would be one of the shortcomings, is just that the way they collect information and when they begin. Another shortcoming is just accessibility. Someone who's not an academic would never go to an archive and understand how to retrieve a primary source. I mean, even the first week that I was here, I went to go visit the National Archive, or like the Central Government Archive, and I had no plan. I didn't know exactly what. I just literally wanted to see the archive itself. It was kind of like a Hail Mary.
Of course, it does not have the look like the Library of the Congress.
No. Well, I went, and I ran into a lovely archivist on the bus, and he goes, "Oh, like, where are you going?" "Oh, I'm going to the archive." "I work at the archive." "Oh, that's great." He's like, "What do you want to see?" And I was like, "Well, I just want to see the archive." And he was like, No, you have to know exactly what you want to see."
Okay. Why have you chosen Ukraine as the subject of your project?
Because it's been such a big subject of my life, and the life of my family, the life of the people around me. And sitting in Chicago and reading RT reports claiming that Euromaidan participants were fascists made me so sick that I decided it would probably be a very good idea to begin just refuting that completely, because it did. I would have people, "Oh, you went to Ukraine for the Maidan, how was that?" "Oh, it was nice." "Oh, I read this article, about how Ukrainians are neo-Nazis." That's so strange. I was there. I didn't meet one neo-Nazi. Actually, I'm relatively certain that this is about progress and becoming a more sustainable country. But why do you think that? Oh, you know, an RT, they have photos of swastikas written on statues, and they're breaking statues and etc. And they didn't believe me at all. I was like, no, this isn't true.
Okay, what inspired you to begin this project? Your love to Ukraine, or just your energy to change something?
My love for Ukraine. I'm a Ukrainian, and I'm proud to be a Ukrainian, and it's hard to be a Ukrainian in a world that wants to make it disappear and destroy it and break its culture away. I mean, growing up all the time, oh, like, oh, you're Ukrainian. Yes, I'm Ukrainian. Oh, so you're like Polish and Russian. Or even in university, I had to take a Russian literature course. And the teacher's like, oh, where are you from? Ukraine. Starts speaking to me in Russian. And I'm like, no, it's Ukrainian. And it's just like a refusal to accept.
Okay, the US citizens, does they know much about Ukraine or not?
Not much. Not much. Ukrainian history is very much in the shadows. I mean, it has a lot to do.
In the shadow of the USSR, in the shadow of the Russia, or in the shadow of the Europe?
In the shadow of the USSR. I mean, we don't have to. When the United Nations was created, it was created in partnership with Stalin. The United States.
And I should also mention that it was created by the one of the initiative of the Ukrainian foreign ministers in that time.
Right, but it was like the security powers of that council included Stalin, like shaking hands with Stalin, and so the United States, even if it wanted to like truly expose all of the dilemmas and hypocrisies of Russia and Russian politics, they would have to admit to their own hypocrisies by even having sat down at a table with them. And so that's just kind of paved the way for why there's just so little information in the United States regarding Ukraine.
Okay, Maya, question about propaganda and the information. How will you challenge propaganda and partial media reports? I want to say that how do you want just to fight with the not confirmed information? For example, from Russian way.
Because you can't challenge an archive. You can't challenge a photo.
This is a nice answer, by the way.
You can't challenge an artifact. You don't have to navigate your way through some reporter or some expert's own bigotries. You just get to see exactly what you're looking at and form your own opinion about it.
So, and the last questions, because we have no much time. What is the future project of the archive? So you just create the project, and what then?
Well, it's a little crazy, but hopefully in 6 months, if we're able to get the cooperation and collaboration of the individuals and the institutions and the initiatives, once we launch, I want to open up the archive to the last 100 years, which is where it really becomes important that we have the cooperation of the institutions and the archives. In a way, it's, for lack of better words, mainstreaming Ukrainian history.
So let's talk about not the archive, not the information, but about the war that we have now. What is the aim of this war? How do you think?
The aim of Russia?
Yeah. The aim of Russia aggression.
Well,
because many experts says that Russia wants to control Ukraine, and others says that Russia wants to invade in Ukraine, and so on. What's your opinion as the U.S. citizen?
What's the difference between control and invade in this case?
No. The expert says that we can control it by the political way, and
oh well,
invasion
that
is
failed for them, so that's why they invaded, obviously.
So what's your opinion?
My opinion?
Yeah.
Of why the United States isn't being more supportive, and why the international world isn't being more supportive?
For example, the United States.
Well,
Because you know, the United States said that they are involved in the resolution of this conflict. But in any case, and the United States will help Ukraine to just prevail all this issue which Ukraine has.
I mean, I guess it's a problem of how do you deal with Russia and how do you understand Russia in a political way. I mean, Russia doesn't function like any other country or any, you know, any country in Western Europe. Doesn't function like the United States. Most countries invade and attend to they invade countries because of a socio-political gain. Sure, Russia has a lot to gain socio-politically by invading Ukraine, but they're also completely, I don't know how to say it, alienating themselves, or I mean, they're not being very diplomatic, let's say, in the Western
Maya,
world.
on that
Sorry.
not positive note, I'm forced to interrupt you because our time is over. Till that time, I would like to remind you the motto of the Churchill: keep buggering on.
Thank you.
Yes, keep buggering on. My special guest today is Maya Demianczuk, researcher and archivist, DePaul University.